Hello, welcome. This lesson will learn about how you kick off a project, how you start it up, and it is a very delicate process. If projects are not starting up with everyone on board, and you have all the permits needed, you will have problems later. So starting up anything is very important to set expectations and to make sure you are actually allowed to start. So we'll learn about permitting process and also the process for starting a construction project. For permitting, regardless of the project, if it is private or public, so even public agencies need to get permits for their projects from their counterpart kind of public, which is, jurisdiction agencies like cities and counties. So they need to get permits for these projects. Any violation to these permits will result in halting the project and maybe even putting it at a very high risk of derailing it out of schedule here. So when you get or acquire a permit, it can be an expensive item in your project, depending on the complexity of the project, and if it is there's zoning issue here also involved. If you're building a facility that's not within its intended zone, then you will have additional permitting overhead that you have to handle, which we call the planning permit. And then there's if you are in the intended zone, then you will have the building permit. So we will touch more on these, but there is the planning process to prove you to build in unintended or in a zone that you're not allowed to be there. So like you're building a retail building in a residential area, for example. And there is the building permit, which deals with making sure that you're using the correct building materials and methods to construct that facility. So for both, there is the permitting fees. So for the city, will ask you to pay this amount of money for letting them even review your permit and issuing the permit. And then there's the administrative costs on your side. So whoever is going to the city hall and submitting the paperwork, all of this is time, and that time costs money. So there are two main types of permits here. There is the building codes and ordinance. So we're not covering the planning permit because that's a whole different thing. But if you are building in the intended zone, then you're dealing with the building permit. And then there's the construction right-of-way use and permits. So building permits deal with building codes, and basically the city staff and plan checkers will make sure that your plans are satisfying the different building code requirements. There's the general codes like the Uniform Code and the International Building Code, and there is specialized trade codes. So there is the electrical, mechanical, and there are also use codes here in terms of Disability Act, ADA, a fire code. So there are different codes that you have to satisfy, and also there are unique code requirements by locality, so by the city or county. So there are a lot of codes you have to comply with, and it's always better to deal with design and construction professionals who are local. You don't bring someone from the East Coast to build a building in the West Coast because they're not familiar with localities and different requirements there. So when you get a permit, first you need to consult with the permitting agency during the preliminary design. So you don't invest a lot of time in design and making a lot of decisions, and then, oops, you're hitting the wall here that the city is asking for this, not that. So you always consult with them, schedule meetings with them during the preliminary design. That's mainly here your architect and engineers. Once you do that, then you're comfortable with getting early feedback from the city on your design. Then you prepare 2 copies and submit them for getting the permit. The city or that permitting agency will review the plans, and if there are any issues, they will send it back to you to fix them. If there are no issues, they are approved. The permit is issued, so you pull the permit now, it's issued, and 1 copy will stay with the city, 1 copy will be returned to the the one who pulled the permit, to keep on site. And then you start construction. So between that step and this step, you have a limited time. So you have to build within a year, I think. Depends on the locality, but you can't. It's not like a blank card. You can build whenever you want, like after 10 years, because building codes are updated, and within a year or whatever time frame that this permit states, you have to start construction. When you start construction over different intervals at different points, now this is why skilled construction managers will be helpful here, that they will be able to cascade the construction progress with the inspection progress. So at every time before, like when you do the trenching and place the drainage pipes, let's say, they have to be inspected before you actually backfill the trenches. So it's kind of points in time that you get to wait for inspectors to come, and you have to schedule these inspections before you can actually progress in different parts of the project. So once these inspections are done, you get all the signatures, then your goal is, from the permitting perspective, to get that certificate of occupancy, which is dependent on a lot of satisfying all of the permits that and building codes and requirements and inspections needed for this building. That's from the building code, which is the construction methods and the design aspects of the facility itself that you're building. But the construction operations around it, you need permits for these. So permits for disrupting the traffic in the area. So you have to have a traffic control plan that you need to get a permit for that. If you're dealing with trenches, then you need a permit for that. If you're creating a lot of waste, especially like demolishing a building, then you need a permit for that. So there are a lot of construction-related permits, right-of-way, and things like that that you have to get to pull, or to be able actually to do the construction activities themselves. So the next question here is, who is responsible for getting the permits? We're talking here about mainly the building permits. So pulling the permit, meaning that getting that the permit approved. So that's not the payment, that's the permit. So I will correct that. But getting the permit approved and pay for its fee. Who is doing that? Who's writing their name on the form to get the permit and pay for the fee? That's called pulling the permit. So who can pull the permit? So in a design bid build project, which is kind of the basis of our discussion in most of this course, there is the owner, there is the architect, there is the contractor. Who's pulling the permit here? Generally, it is either the owner or the builder. Based on who will do that, it's depending on how they would like to take on the third-party liability. If the owner writes their name in the permit, this means that if there is any accident that causes third-party liabilities, we learn about that, and risks, that they will be liable. So whoever got injured, they will go to the city and ask who has the permit to build that facility on the street. Oh, it's the owner. Then they will sue the owner. If the builder name is on the permit, then they will sue the builder. So generally, as a recommendation, it's better to have the builder name in the permit, because now they have a skin in the game, and that kind of course there are other measures, but this is kind of a little detail that helps to keep the builder really have a skin in the game and pay attention to the safety on site. So the common process then of pulling the permit is that the architect and engineering team will meet with the planning departments and building departments kind of to get early feedback on their preliminary design until a point where they reach ready to issue plans, meaning that once they hand these plans to the owner, the expectation is there will be very minimal corrections needed because they got this feedback from the permitting agency ahead. So now the owner can decide, should I pull the permit, or the builder should pull the permit. So that's a decision that will be made between the owner or by the owner mainly to discuss with the contractor. Of course, if the builder with the contractor is pulling the permit, that's an additional fee that they will charge for the administrative effort to do that. So we're done with the permitting now, project startup. So after you're selected as the low price better, and what will be the next steps? Like, what should I do next as a contractor? So first of all, you would wait for the notice of award. So that's kind of before you sign the contract. Of course, you have to sign the contract at some point, but between that time gap between that you won the project and getting the signature on a contract, you need to get that notice of award, kind of a documentation, a legally binding documentation for the owner and also the contractor to say that we are getting into this project. So it happens immediately after everything is settled and negotiated, the details of the contract, until lawyers kind of jump in and try to finalize the contract. We need to have that notice of award issues. So that's just a sample here. Here it says here, within 10 days after complying with these conditions, the city will return to you with a fully signed counterpart of the agreement with the contract documents attached. So that's kind of setting a timeline. Within 10 days, we will have that contract finalized. But we have this just notice here to say we are moving forward. Now, that doesn't mean that you can actually start the physical construction activities on site. So that needs another information and expectation to be set here. So that can be done in the contract, like we've seen that in the AIA documents. You can actually state a date for starting the actual construction, or a notice to proceed document that can be issued by the owner to say you can start constructing on this date. So notice of award comes to document our commitment legally, but then notice to proceed is to document that I'm making the site available for you, Mr. Contractor, on this date. And this is what notice to proceed kind of would look like. Very short, just one page, kind of a quick letter to set dates of when you can proceed and access the site to move your equipment, to move your people, and start the construction. Before you move to the site, before you do all of that, and after the contract is signed between the owner and GC, and then the GC signs contracts with the subs, everyone now is legally committed and binded. Then you're ready to start the project, but they need to have expectations set straight for everyone. And that's what the pre-construction conference comes in. It's a meeting that a lot of people attend. At least it's the owner, the GC, the architect, and the main prime subs or trade contractors, and sometimes suppliers if you're dealing with a heavy kind of systems in your building, like heavy air handling units, or like a walk-in freezer in a school, and it's a big item in your schedule. So you might need to have suppliers in this meeting. The agenda is just setting expectations. What would be the procedures to handling RFIs, a change order, who would be the contract person, how to access the site and the site layout, the security in terms of accessing the site physically and also accessing the project documents, communication protocol, the access contact persons and different teams, and of course material delivery, especially if you were doing a project in a residential area. This is a very critical part, or in a school zone. It's very critical. Like, you're discussing little details, logistical details of the project and setting expectations with these. So it's a very important meeting. I'm not doing its due justice by putting in just one slide, but it is a very important meeting to pay attention to and plan have a good plan for it and execute it in a good way. So that's it. We learn about permits, and we learn about the process of kicking off a construction project, the startup process. In next lessons, we'll learn about different documentations needed now over the time of the construction project. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself and those around you.